Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by the Adam Meakin, Arwin, Refracted Curvature, Neil, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Neil's on mute.
Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you back on YouTube, Arwin.
No, I'm not. I literally just got a strike in the middle of my freaking live show.
Oh,
that's
no.
bad timing.
I
Congratulations.
haven't been
Sorry.
keeping up to date with the early
Makes
birds.
no fucking sense, man.
No swearing. What happened? You've been struck for what?
Bullying.
Bullying?
Yeah, I was freaking the most calm person. I didn't even respond to the trolls. I don't get this. What the hell's going on, man? My freaking life's getting ruined here.
Okay, just take a breath. Read the terms of service on bullying, and then you'll probably get a vague idea of what you shouldn't have done.
Oh, hey.
That's it. That's all I kind of advise
Well,
you.
I apparently just shouldn't talk about anything then, because I wasn't angry. It wasn't anything. I didn't address any stupid subjects. Nothing. I was just saying hello to people and whatever they brought up, which wasn't anything about the latest thing. So it's just,
Okay,
I don't get it, man.
Well, like I say, my advice would be go to the terms of service for YouTube and look at the section on bullying and read it thoroughly so that you can get a good idea of what your problem was. Hopefully, you won't be under a copyright strike or whatever they call it, a community guideline strike for very long. Did they give you a time limit?
Well, it's going to be 2 weeks now if they just let it happen. What the hell am I supposed to do? I can't talk about anything. Community guideline. I didn't talk about anything in the community guideline strikes. I'm pretty damn sure I didn't.
You don't know that. You haven't read them. So, like I say, third time, just read the community guidelines on bullying and then you'll be fine from there on in. You can skirt the
Could you give me a direct link? I can't even get in there.
Okay. In the pre-show, right, Adam and I had a very nice conversation about COVID. Shocking, isn't it? Because it's part of the rules and regulations. But if you know what the rules and regs are, you won't overstep them. And you can talk about subjects that are close to the bone, close to the edge of what might get you in trouble, but without any necessary fear that you do something wrong. So that's all the advice I can ever give you. Anyway, that's it. I'm sorry, Arwin. I'm not pleased to hear that. It's bad news. You can probably hear it in my voice. I'm gutted for you.
Yeah, I could really use some support, by the way. I haven't had anything in a week. Is that going to be another 2 weeks? If that happens, I'm going to be kicked out of my house.
Okay, well, e-begging aside, hopefully you won't turn my show into your e-begging, but, you know, I can't help you other than I've continually told you to be familiarised with the rules. That's it. That's all you can do. Anyway, I'm sorry, Arwin. It's not the best of news. Hopefully you'll sort it out. I'm sure people will go to your video, check out your PayPal link, and support you in some way over the next couple of weeks. But don't turn this into your street corner, you damn whore.
Any evidence of gravity?
Right. Okay, Arwin, are you going to be okay?
No. Could you please link me up to this supposed bully? I can't find shit in this damn YouTube policy garbage page. Okay, I can't find shit in there. I've tried.
Okay, well, you're swearing
like for half an hour straight. I couldn't find anything in there. It's just a jumbled mess.
Okay. I mean, we can talk about it after if you want, but for the meantime, did you want to drop and see if you can find the terms of service for YouTube rather than just swearing a lot? And, you know, if if you're obviously distracted with that, then do you want to do that for a bit and then come back?
No,
I'll link you up, Owen. I've got it here.
thank you.
Perfect. Obviously, I can't do that. We're 5 minutes into the live show, having talked about Arwen's woes, and I don't, whatever. I don't mind you doing that. Mind's the wrong word. I just couldn't think of anything quick enough. I didn't want dead air. You don't have the word for somebody when they've got caught under the kibosh of a YouTube guideline. You just feel bad for them. What else can you do? That wasn't rhetorical. I'm asking, what else can I do for Arwen at this moment in time? What else can I do for him?
I don't think there's a lot we can do. We've got to find out what he's done, challenge it, and then
YouTube won't tell you, right? But they'll give you a vague idea, and that's what they've given you. Bullying, that's it. They'll give you one word. Well, that's it. You go to the terms of service, you look at bullying, you look at what it says. That's it. That's all you can do. Anyway, I've said that 4 times. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Please share the show, smash the share button, all that sort of stuff. Please join the Discord server if you did want to challenge us about Flat Earth, and hopefully we'll get some questions from anybody who's watching in regards to the videos that we'll be covering today. Becky's on the agenda, so joy of joys. I'm sure you're all very excited about that. You'll be letting her know that we've responded to yet another one of her videos. She's become our regular for some reason, along with Neil deGrasse Tyson and a couple of others. But yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Anything in the Flat Earth realm before I go to a couple of housekeeping questions, just to break the ice and break the tension of Arwen's recent community guideline strike?
Yeah, Earth is flat.
Anything new in that regard?
Yeah, it's always been flat.
Oh, well, thank you, Neil. That's really useful. Shout out to Godzilla37. He says, YouTube's T's, OC's is deliberately clear as mud. Makes for easy banning at a whim. To act like it's not dishonest, ... Thank you for the super chat. I don't know. I get updates. They email me when there's any changes, and I just go and familiarise myself with the change, and I've never really had a particular issue with it. So it's the unwritten stuff that I have issues with. But, I best not speculate. Thank you for the super chat.
New idea that certain news idea that certain schools are going to be teaching the flat Earth concept.
Okay, now that is new. Where's your citation and your supporting blah blahs?
I'll see if I could find it and I'll post it. But this is what the guy was telling me in chat, in one of the chats I was in, that they are thinking about starting to teach it along with the globe.
They already do.
50 things.
Go on, John.
It's been taught all the time. Yeah, the globe needed the flat Earth. That's why they always make fun of the flat Earth, but they still teach how they got the measurements and everything. They need that part. So they use the measurements, but then they just make fun of it.
Yeah, that curved sea level's a bummer.
No, I completely agree with you, John. It's one of the reasons why we're not eradicated out of all existence unreasonably by people like YouTube in that regard, because you have to ascertain flat baselines for certain aspects of the geometry, even for a globe. In other words, flat Earth's a prerequisite for life in general. So you can't really censor it out of reality, because then where do you draw the line for the algorithm? Do you draw it at the line of someone who's just happens to be describing how they navigate? And they detail all of the right angles to the GP points of the stars out along a flat baseline. Boom, banned. You're a flat earther. What did I do? That is how you navigate. What are they going to do? You can't ban the descriptions of horizontal being horizontal. You can have the reverse of it. The numpties, like the guy we covered who's not an Apple fan. Well, his idea is, I think they should rename horizontal the horizon that's curved. All right, well, yeah, that's generally the idea of anti-flat earthers and people who look into the subject of their geometric bastardization of a flat earth and call it a globe. But then they think that their reification of that globe is actually the world they're standing on. And then they go to finding curved horizontals. Okay, well, that's the nonsense that should really be censored out of existence. It isn't. It's promoted as preferred content. That seems unreasonable. But you're not going to find that in the terms of service, I assure you. You'll find it in Congress when they talk about what they'll do to deal with this flat earth problem. You're like, oh, right, why is it a problem? Well, it's a problem as far as Congress are concerned when they've got YouTube under the kibosh. That's when it's a problem. Okay, so if we all accept that that's a problem, why is it a problem? Well, no one's asking that, are they? Because the majority of people are saying, yeah, of course it's a problem, bloody flat earthers. So, yeah, while the majority sees flat earth as a problem because they don't appreciate that their model's based on it, that's where we'll remain, in limbo. That's where we're kept, in a grey area.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, Chocolate.
As far as growth goes, the gray area can only get larger.
Exactly.
You know?
That's what I'm relying on. The grey area sits where I don't get automatic promotion just because I'm a hard-working YouTuber here daily, editing videos all day, all night, waking up and immediately responding to comments. You know, that doesn't mean anything. The level of hard work, if you're under the kibosh, you don't get automatic promotion. I've got no chance of getting some video that I do, some response going viral. That'll never happen. None of my shorts will get 50,000 views just because it's a really catchy little got you on one of the Globe Believers. That's never going to happen. Simon Dan can put out some quote from me and get immediate viral videos out of it because he's preferred content. So if I'm not privileged to that, what do I do to resolve it? Well, I'll tell you. I respond to Dr. Becky. I put a link to her video because I'm such a conscientious YouTuber, even though I'm under the kibosh. And I said, go to videos that we're responding to, leave them a comment, help them in the algorithm, in the vain hope that she will do the same if she were to ever respond. Now, don't get me wrong, we've only had one person so far that came along and said, yeah, I've put your link to the video you responded to me with in my video. Now, later, after the fact, someone came back and said, I couldn't see that link. I think he's a liar. But it doesn't matter. You know, if it's the sentiment of a narcissist, duper's delight that followed, you know, I don't care. The fact that the sentiment is being echoed verbally, even if not in physical reality, is irrelevant. That's the sentiment. The sentiment is, I want them to put my link in their video when they respond and say, no, you're wrong.
You know,
go ahead.
You are actually ahead in the algorithm because we predicted it would be 100 shows before we would get one respondent.
I agree, by the rule of 10. I mean, I remember breaking it down, and I was like, well, if you put 100 feelers out, you should get 10 people vaguely interested, which means you'll get one respondent. Well, we're well ahead. Well, not well ahead of that curve. We've probably done 50 responses. Sometimes the rule of 10 still stacks up because we'll do another 100 and get no one. So, yeah, the rule of 10 still just about in line. I just want to say this one last thing. Just let me say this. I've put a link to Dr. Becky's video. So literally go into a video, say Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. We love your stuff. And I really enjoyed Nathan responding to you. Something positive that doesn't get your comment linked, but ultimately alludes to the fact that Nathan Oakley 1980 has sent you to that video. So go ahead, John, and then we'll get into Dr. Becky.
Hold on. I want to say I just posted the two things there. If you want to take a look at them. That's what he sent me.
We'll come to that. NCSE, yeah?
Yeah, that's what the guy sent me. That's what he's talking about.
Okay, we'll come to that.
Well, we said it was 1 in 10 before we got a respondent, 1 in 100 before we got a respondent who linked your video.
Was that how it broke down? Yeah, then we're definitely ahead of the curve. Okay.
But does it count? Does it count when the response comes from somebody who's kind of already in this argument? That like, is that a bit of a different?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of wishy-washy about it.
I'm a bit wishy-washy about that because you can almost call him an anti-flat earther, in which case it's worth nothing, isn't it? Let's be honest. Either way, let's do a bit of Becky. Was there something else, John? Or if not, we'll crack on.
Well, I would say that the anti-flat earthers, because of the way YouTube is being controlled, have regained a usefulness because it's really our only mitigation of pushing the truth out, even if it is through the warped lens of their psychosis.
His theory of general relativity is the best description we have for how gravity works. Everything from launching satellites into space to how planets orbit around the sun and how the sun orbits around the Milky Way, and also how stuff moves around black holes. Every test we've put it through, it's passed with flying colours. So does that mean that we can all just sort of pat ourselves on the back and brush our hands of it and all go home because job's done. No. We are still testing gravity. And
Okay, so first problem. She's ascribed everything in the known existence to having a causal link to gravity, and then disclaiming after causally linking everything to it that they don't know anything about it. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that gravity is a pseudo concept in a pseudo geometry. It has a dimension of time that bends, and that's ascribed as causal. It's not. 83 people watching. Please share the show.
Well, she described the pseudo reality of planets and black holes. So maybe that's perfectly legitimate in the pseudo reality.
Well, she also said every test. Well, I'd like to see those tests. I think it's equations that she means.
Uncle Ben says, dungarees on an adult, mental. I don't know about that. I spent the weekend in Birmingham city centre with my wife looking at various different shops that were very high fashion, and dungarees are a thing at the moment, as far as all the dummies were concerned. And I mean dummies with, clothes on them. Also, shout out to Godzilla37. Thank you for the super chat, Uncle Ben. Derogatory though it was towards our esteemed opponent, who we hold in very high regard, Dr. Becky. Godzilla37 says, make your dislike of Becky's opinions known today. Soon, that too will be censored out. Right, so you're saying if somebody disagrees in a negative way, you'll be censored out of all existence. Yeah, possibly. Again, I would describe that to human nature. Maybe I'll come up with my example of that happened to me yesterday on someone's live stream chat. We'll maybe get into that later, but thank you for the super chat, Godzilla37. Really appreciate the support, both of you and also Uncle Ben. Thanks for the super chats.
As far as Dr. Becky and what she said, the first thing that I would jump on would be that she said that that general relativity passed with flying colours every test that we put it through. Now I know Ted Mann already mentioned this, but what are these tests? What are they? That they about the maths for general relativity match the maths for general relativity? No way. That's uncanny. Because that's all that happened. They matched the maths for general relativity with the maths for general relativity, and it turns out they always match. I mean, that's like 2 always equals 2. It's like phenomenal. That's what I heard. That's this crazy maniac.
We're coming up with different theories of gravity, which we could also test our understanding of.
Okay, so we're into the hijacking of science. Someone left a comment saying, I like Nathan's videos, but every time I come, it's basically the same thing. You watch about 15 seconds of a video, point out how it hasn't got scientific validity, and then play another 15 seconds of the video, prove that they haven't got any scientific evidence for gravity, play another 15 seconds of the video, describe how they're not establishing cause and effect reasoning with systematic experimentation, play another 15 seconds of the video. And I'm like, yeah, that is the world we live in, and not much is changing around us. So yeah, we'll continue to go through every video, and they'll always have the same exact criticisms of them. So in this instance, she's talking about testing theories when theories come after testing experiments in the scientific method. So the order would be hypothesis, then scientific test, that's experiment, then theory. Well, she's just said, well, we've got more theories to test, because she's talking like the guy yesterday about colloquial theories, not systematic experimentation based on a hypothesis. That's the scientific method. That's not what she's dealing with. So she's got more theories to test, more colloquial bullshit that people have sat around the pub saying might be true, perhaps presenting it with a graph. That's what we've actually got.
What he said might be true, but there's also that little disclaimer that we usually hear in these videos where they'll tell you everything that we just spoke about, we don't know, or we haven't actually tested any of this stuff. That little disclaimer usually comes a little softly, a little nice in the middle of the video, in the middle of all the nonsense that we just had to go through.
Well, she did it
You
wrong.
just gotta listen for that.
She offered it right up front, saying how much they were getting wrong and how much they didn't know. But you're absolutely right. When you're talking about scientific evidence, you're talking about empirically validated experimental tests. And the outcome is an empirical outcome in regards to the cause and effect you've studied. But she's talking about having more theories to test. Like, how are you going to test them? Tests come before the theory in science. but you're lending your credence to this nonsense. It's the same old story, Becky, every single time.
It's not only Becky, it's all of them, because instead of focusing on what was just said, stand back as an audience and as a panel and just say, are the words that I'm hearing truthful and can be validated, or is this something that is part of a deception that if I critically think and ask the right questions about, like, what's a theory, how do you test it, what comes first, that I could somehow for myself find out if I'm being misled or going down the wrong road. So to me, it's these kind of videos, and every time they trip up, it's showing that they are just pandering and a puppeteering deception. But I don't think Dr. Becky thinks she's deceiving anybody. This is her world. This is what she lives in. She substituted actual laws. It's like the Tesla quote. You know, real scientists used to experiment and go for empiricism. Today, they're lost in the world of math and equations.
Right, should we have a little bit more of Becky?
The hope
Yay.
of better understanding how our universe works. So let's kick things off with a little bit of a reminder of some science history. Isaac Newton is credited with the first explanation of what gravity is.
In science, an explanation would be a validated hypothesis. In other words, you explain what caused the effect you studied. Whereas, again, we're having Isaac Newton be the first to have an explanation for something that isn't an occurring phenomena. Because what he's about to describe is an object of mass, in his vernacular, falling through the medium of air. Well, air, in the same vernacular, has mass. And he's moving in all directions. But he's going to be the first to describe this? Yeah, it's amazing how you can con people with maths.
Every single particle is attracted to every other.
We'll hear that again. Go ahead.
It's interesting she brings up Isaac Newton, because he said he claimed no hypothesis. He claimed no science. What is she on about?
Exactly.
An absurdity.
Exactly.
And
Go ahead, Chocolate.
no, I just wanted to add, yeah, he said it's an absurdity. And anybody with any faculty of philosophical matters would just disregard this nonsense. But here it is, described to him.
Okay.
Right,
Okay, this is perfect.
Him being Newton, by the way, we're talking about the words of Newton. We're quoting Newton in a letter where he's saying, I feign no hypothesis. He's saying, or maybe that was in the Principia, I forget. Either way, in one of the letters, he's saying that he wouldn't want this ascribed to him. This is gravity. The one that she's saying he was the first to give an explanation for it. All right. I feign no hypothesis, according to Newton. But she's ascribing it to science. Well, she's just wrong. And in the words of Newton himself, it's not science. But she's saying it is. Right? She's calling it a theory. All right. Well, afraid not.
Well, right here is a perfect example of what I said earlier, meaning we just heard her say it. Now we can say, hey, Dr. Becky, do you know that, that there was no hypothesis for this, and he never claimed to have one? In fact, he kind of talked about it as, you know, he wasn't even saying that. What do you got to say for this now that you quoted the man's name?
I mean, he literally said, like, that this force that could act between two different masses, it's just nonsense. And she's about to go right into how that works and then put it on his name. Like, that's insanity that they do that like that, just flippantly.
A warning from Google saying my internet's screwy. Just did a speed test. 395 down, 21.4 up megabits per second. That's perfect. What's he talking about? Anyway, sorry. Just a distracting message from the server that you guys are in on G+, or the G+ server. Anyway, sorry for that distraction. We'll carry on.
Science history. Isaac Newton is credited with the first explanation of what gravity is. That every single particle is attracted to every other particle in the universe by a force. And that force depends on how massive those particles are and how far apart they are. Newton.
Okay, so let's just debunk that. Right. Gas
Okay.
has mass and would be described in its behavior with elastic collisions. It's not attracted to other gas particles. In fact, if you describe when they're interacting with each other at the literal minimal distance, they repel each other. Yeah, elastic collisions. Totally debunking this assertion in every way, shape, and form it could be made. Anybody else?
Okay, can I debunk her with Isaac Newton's words himself?
Good.
I'll just read part of the quote. That gravity should be innate, inherent, and essential to matter, so that one body may act upon another at a distance through a vacuum without the mediation of anything else, by and through which their action and force may be conveyed from one to another, is to me so great an absurdity that I believe no man who has in philosophical matters a competent faculty of thinking can ever fall into it. End quote. Isaac Newton. So keep going, Becky.
Yeah, these are Isaac Newton's words. Yeah? So what are you talking about, Becky? Even the man himself says no. Yeah? And gas behaviour completely debunks this.
Even wrote that down as a few equations, and those equations allowed us to predict where cannonballs would land and how high we could throw a ball, and even the orbits of the planets.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, if air was a mass and that mass was given weight via a force of gravity, then objects would weigh less in a vacuum. Objects weigh more in a vacuum, debunking the whole any claim of gravity being in existence and it being a force of attraction between masses.
I
Also,
go on, John.
I was going to say also, Newton's equations don't account for returning Earth within them. So, like, it's stating a stationary Earth within the nonsense.
So cannonballs. What do cannonballs and apples have in common?
They're both solid.
They're both heavier than the medium they exist in, air. So what are they going to do? Go up or come down?
Right, let's give you a quick quote. I got this for just this occasion from Quantum Eraser because I couldn't dig it out at a pinch. Okay. This is from Richard Feynman. Quote, "The discovery of quantum mechanics first, and then in the behaviour of light, and then in the behaviour of matter, finally culminating in 1926 with a full equation of quantum mechanics which told us that the laws of motion of Newton were not right and had to be modified with other laws which are quantum laws of motion." End quote. Richard Feynman, Nobel laureate physics.
Just to go to Newton, I pulled up the Principia one where he mentions gravity. So, in Principia, Newton describes gravity as an ever-present force, a tug that all objects exert on nearby objects. The more mass of an object has, the stronger its tug. Increasing the distance between two objects weakens the attraction. That's his description, his theoretical description. But I think just point out here as well, the truth is Newton could only describe gravity, but he didn't know how it worked. In his own words, gravity must be caused by an agent acting constantly according to certain laws, he admitted. But whether this agent be material or immaterial, I have left to the consideration of my readers. And I'll point out that it's 300 years that sits there before anybody does anything with it. It was so profound and useful, actually, of proving gravity itself, that nobody does anything with it. They just let it sit there. It's not until we get down the line that we start to invent the forces. But at this point, it's just something that could be, but it's not attributed to anything. And Newton, from my understanding, makes great strides to distinguish what he observes and what he can prove and demonstrate.
Right. Quick couple of shout out. And then I'm going to have a sidebar that I didn't expect to be having, but I'm going to put the segue in anyway. I alluded to it earlier. Gas fills space. Level means flat. 4 more hours. Thank you very much, the price of Adam, for the super chat. Also, is that Original D-Rose? Thank you very much for the super sticker. Really appreciate it. So yesterday I got put in a timeout on one of the channels that I watch as a bit of escapism from Flat Earth. So before the Gwyneth Paltrow trial that's currently taking place, it was the Johnny Depp trial. Again, just a bit of escapism. Celebrities and their first world problems. Anyway, in this instance, I'll just clarify this. I'm on Paltrow's side. She's being shook down by a guy who smacked into her, as far as I can ascertain, from the evidence that's been laid down so far. But no one actually saw it happen. They saw just before, just after, there was people right around, they were there immediately, but no one actually saw the impact itself, right? Now, based on that, this guy's shaking her down for 3 million and then reduced it to 300,000. And part of the issue is that he's got cracked ribs. Interesting to me, I've just had cracked ribs. So I'm interested from that perspective. Now, they bring in an expert, Paltrow's team, who I'm on the side of, and I believe, right? And he starts talking about the force in newtons, gravity, F equals ma, right? He's got the whole shebango based on Newton and the laws of Newton. The problem that I saw in his evidence that he gave was there wasn't any measurements. It's the same old story we deal with here. He keeps referring to his calculations that he's made. He throws up on a whiteboard a load of seemingly complicated maths to a lawyer, but he just throws up some maths that the majority of people probably didn't follow along with, and then he declares who's at fault. He's the witness, he's the defendant's witness. In other words, he's on Paltrow's side. Right, so you can imagine what his conclusions are. But those aside, which I even agreed with, the conclusions alone, but the basis for the conclusions were utilising aspects of Newton that I know are wrong. I've just read out Feynman's quote. And, moreover, my point was to say there's no measurements taking place here. Right? He's conjured everything he's given you out of thin air. It's calculations only. No one even saw the damn thing. Did he measure how much newtons of force were on the guy's bloody ribs when Paltrow fell on him? No. He's got no measurements. Just calculations. So he's got the conjurings of the words, in this case the language of maths, to create forces and how much would break ribs. You know, this is conjured out of thin air. Show me a measurement. There isn't one. Further to that, the laws of Newton are wrong. They're not right. That was my perspective in the chat. I'm a Paltrow fan and I got timed out for it. Told to stop spamming and things of that nature. When I'm pointing out, this is on a channel called Legal Bytes. So I actually like the channel host, and I said to her in the chat while this was going on, you know, because there's a bit of a kerfuffle about this, because I'm essentially disagreeing with the evidence being presented from the side that everybody else is on, so including me. So when someone challenges the basis of the evidence being presented, which is me, saying I don't agree with this because he hasn't got any measurements, that's my main overriding point. And then when people start talking about how valid newtons are in his calculations, I'm like, oh, Newton's not even right. And then I start getting asked for citations. And I didn't have a pinch, hence me asking QE for that Feynman quote, to be honest. Not because it tied into today's show, because I was furious and I couldn't find it at a pinch. Anyway, the point is that for that, I got kicked out of the chat. Not banned, maybe I was, I don't know. But I was furious. I was like, goodbye. I'm unsubscribing in my fury, stomping off in a huff. But actually, check her out. She's very good at Legal Bytes herself. This is one of her overzealous mods in this regard. But yeah, it doesn't mean I disagree with the overall premise that's being put forth by the defendant, Gwyneth Paltrow. It doesn't mean I don't believe her story. I do. It just means that the evidence I saw is being presented in a way that supported her story, and that's what you pay for with good lawyers, right? Something that's going to razzle-dazzle the jury. And most of the jury are going to be like your layman, and they're not going to follow along with newtons and the forces that have been quote-unquote calculated. They're not going to see the magic trick. Now, we deal daily with the magic trick of calculations over measurements. So when I saw it, I'm like, oh, here we go. A bit of a swindle from a ski scientist. And you're like, no, I can trump that. I've got Feynman. If you want to argue with me about whether or not the Newton values are correct, notwithstanding the fact that certain aspects of it do work in the medium of air, doesn't change the fact that ultimately the laws of motion of Newton were not right, end quote, Feynman. That's the point. But not my overarching point when it comes to the swindle of calculations over measurements. And that got me kicked out anyway of the chat, or at least for 5 minutes. So I just thought I'd drop it in. because this magic trick, like we were describing in the pre-show, is cross genre. I don't know what the word I'm looking for in that regard, but that's the best I can come up with. It's cross subject matter. Doesn't matter if you're looking at the swindle of maths versus science or calculations in maths versus measurements in maths. There's always some hustle going on, and when you know it, you spot it immediately and call it out, even if the person that's using the hustle is on your side. It's like me versus Bob Nodell. I'm on his side, but when I see a swindle, I'm going to call it out. Well, that gets you very much objected to. And in this case, timed out on Legal Bytes live stream chat because people don't like it. Oh, right. You agree with me, but you don't like the way I'm trying to fight my case. Basically, yeah. Yeah, I'll call it out as wrong because it's wrong even if your overall premise is right. Why use a fallacious argument if you're right anyway? Just be right and use good evidence. Don't swindle people with calculations for forces that you've not measured. That's all I was trying to get across when I got timed out. And there's me venting my frustration about Legal Bytes. Subscribe today, by the way, actually. Like I say, I unsubscribed out of frustration. I'll probably subscribe back, as she's very reasonable and even-handed as a host and as a chat mod. So, shout out to you. Anyway, right, that's enough of my rant about Newtons and forces conjured by ski scientists. We move on with Becky.
Hang on.
Well,
No, hang on. I want to comment on that. Okay, whoever went, you go first. I'll finish.
it's on to me.
I was just gonna say that it sounds like they took the hint right out of Neil Smoking the Grass Tyson's book, because he says things like, "Oh, because we were able to calculate how much fuel would be necessary to make it to the moon, therefore we know we went to the moon." I mean that
Yeah.
checks out. Sure.
Couple of shout outs.
Well, I see a parallel.
Just let me shout out these
Go on.
out. JMLs24, thank you very much. 4 more hours. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, Original D-Rose, thanks again for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. It says, come on, everyone. At least give Becky credit for being such an impressive, identical, unsexy version of the late, great comedian Benny Hill. No need. Thank you for the super chat, though. Really appreciate it. Godzilla37 also says, D-Rose makes a valid point. They're both hilarious. There you go. Thanks for bringing it back onto a much less derogatory way of putting it, Godzilla37. They're both very funny. 100 people watching. Woohoo! Please share the show. Go ahead, 10th man. Sorry to interrupt you.
All right, no problem. So this parallels what we talked about earlier. So when you sent that chat in, or you typed it in, you got timed out. You got timed out because they're under this belief system that you're going against established science that is proven, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you didn't have the quote handy, but now you do. But now go to our genre where we're involved in. We're saying, hey, not everything they told you about gas pressure adds up. In fact, they can bring it in a container, and you can't even have it without a container. So how do you have it next to a vacuum? And then guess what? You get labeled a conspiracy theorist. Well, did I say I'm a conspiracy theorist, or is that a label that someone designed for me because it's against consensus science, which is their consensus reality? So because it goes against the grain, they time you out or call you a name like conspiracy theorist. And then all of a sudden you start showing that there's no way you can have gas pressure, and you cite NASA, for example, saying you need it to hit the walls of a container. And then hopefully they stop calling you a conspiracy theorist. But do they? No, they don't, because everyone's under this deception. Now, if Newton himself didn't say it...
You're breaking up quite badly. You're breaking up quite a lot, actually, 10th. You can hear 90% of what you're saying.
Sorry.
But you're breaking up.
Okay. All right, I'll stop.
Any other comment in regards to my Legal Bytes little moan at all? We'll move on to Becky back, because otherwise we're getting segued so far. Becky, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, no, well, what I'd say about the legal thing is that it's an absolutely crap defense. Is that your best defense? I'd tear that apart if I was that guy and I had the information I have now. So it's a rubbish defense. And the fact that they're going against you, I mean, I'd get rid of them. If that was what the lawyers were coming up with. If they're supposed to be defending me, if that's what you got, you're gone. That's horrendous. Anyway, forget about that.
It's more complex
But
than that.
people
This particular evidence is in opposition to a different medical expert's evidence that originally posted claims that were to suggest that there was 1/4 of the force being imposed on one of the parties, and his maths all used newtons and gravity and didn't have any measurements either, which should be my overriding point in this regard. So if you were to go and listen to that particular testimony, as I say, he's speaking in the negative and pulling apart the maths by saying, this is the maths he used, but he didn't get the numbers right. It should be 4 times more. Look, let me show you how it should have worked. And it's like, no. Doesn't matter which way you argue this false dichotomy. None of them have got any measurements. That's the main point. Well, show me how much was actually measured at the point of impact. Oh, right, you've just got your calculations. Well, who fell on who? No one saw it. So what are you basing your calculations on? Well, all on speculation. Like everything, you've conjured them out of thin air. Out your ass, basically.
Well, fair enough. I would consider it a terrible offence, But anyway, it doesn't matter. The main point I want to talk about is about Newton himself, because what a lot of people don't realise is they don't think about what inspired Newton. Right? What was Newton's inspiration? Newton's inspiration was Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler was the first person to start talking about why the globe and how the globe and planets move around the sun within a heliocentric universe. Even though Copernicus was the first to come up with that idea, supposedly, it was Kepler brought it further. And it was Kepler's ideas that inspired Newton. So Newton was working off a faulty hymn sheet straight away. So there's no point in talking about what Newton did, because Newton didn't do anything other than pre-assume that Kepler knew what he was talking about. That's all he did. And Kepler was like, I don't know what causes this, but there must be some kind of force, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. So that's where Newton got his inspiration from.
At the behest of who? I mean, who was putting these people under such instructions to figure these things out?
Who knows? I mean, it makes no sense.
The Roman Catholic Church.
Well, yeah, they're involved, but
involved.
I don't know how much they're involved with Newton. Yeah.
Yeah, it's their system. When you say he appeals to Kepler, well, why do you think Kepler's imposed all of his laws in that regard? They're required for the church.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about the Easter and them needing to know Easter, and that's a totally, I'm not going against that. I'm just saying that where Kepler got his inspiration where Newton got his inspiration was reading Kepler's work. That's where he got it from. That's what started it for Newton. So people think it started with an apple falling on his head. It didn't. It started with Kepler and what Kepler had to say about and Kepler's Analema. That's what it started with. So I just throwing that out there. People don't realise that.
How's my audio?
Much better.
Better.
It'll be better till you run out of bandwidth in about 2 minutes. But go ahead.
Okay, just real quick. If you go back to an overview summary, we're always reminded the Greeks, right? Okay, they love spheres. Okay, so all of a sudden, they're making these guesses. Maybe we're on the sphere because we love spheres, and we look at the moon and the sun and they look like spheres. So next thing you know, you have the Copernicus model for the universe, which is different than the geocentric. It's now heliocentric. So lots of things change. Well, now you need proof for this. Okay, so you go from wanting to be on the sphere because you love spheres to now having a model saying it's heliocentric, no longer geocentric. And then now you've got to have proof. So this is what Brian is saying. One faulty thing led to another. And so they have to conjure up some kind of explanation for living in the heliocentric model. So they can't do it by experimentation. They can't do it by measurements. So all they have left is calculations, equations. And that's why it only exists in the maths. And so this is summary of what's going on. So they'll bastardize Newton, and he got his faulty reasoning from Kepler, and he got his from Copernicus, and he got his from the Greeks.
Okay. Shout out to Fair Stride, who says Becky is hotter than any flirf lady. Okay, well, in the interest and balance, I'm sure that Becky would be pleased to hear it.
Now, when those predictions were accurate, it became clear that this was the way that gravity was working, at least in our local backyard of the universe and in the physics labs on Earth, i.e. the places that we were able to test it in at the time.
Test? Sounds like an experiment to establish the cause of a natural phenomena. Test would be to vary that which you assume causes an effect you've studied. Okay, so what are we studying?
Again,
What's the phenomena?
I'm sorry.
Q win balls in the shed.
Well, she's talking about Newton. That's Cavendish.
Yeah, but Newton didn't have any tests.
No, he found no hypothesis.
There you go.
In the labs of physics, what does that mean?
In little rooms that they call physics labs, that if anything's discussed, emailed, calculated on a whiteboard, you can call it science at the end of the process, because it's the room of science where the science comes out of.
However, the planet Mercury threw a bit of a spanner in the works. Newton's equations didn't give accurate predictions for Mercury's orbit.
Again, predictions. All right, you mean plotting the mechanisms that we see in the sky? Okay. Now, when you say you got it wrong, well, that's because all he was doing was calculating it, and calculations aren't measurements. So what? It didn't match up with reality. Okay. So what? Does it change our reality? No. Does it mean that gravity's wrong? No. Does it mean it exists? No. Doesn't mean anything.
So that suggested that...
Go on.
I was just going to say, this is when Einstein gets tagged in.
Can you replay that last 10 seconds, what she said?
You can, while I shout out this super chat, which is to... Hold on 1 second. Oh, wrong button. Original D-Rose, thank you very much indeed. After spending a harsh nickel or dime in the harsh, fierce personal system, damn Skippy, Becky would be mine. Okay. Sorry I didn't read it out better. There you go. They want 10 seconds earlier.
The planet Mercury threw a bit of a spanner in the works. Newton's equations didn't give accurate predictions for Mercury's orbit. So that suggested
That's
that
it.
his...
Okay.
Newton's equations. Right there, it's telling. Well, first of all, Newton didn't do it. Second of all, you're saying if he did, they were equations. Where's the measurement? Where's the test? It's all in the math.
theory and his equations were flawed somehow.
Yeah, that's convoluting the two, isn't it? Theory / equations. No, theory comes after experiment. Equations are the language of maths.
So along came Einstein
No, you're missing
in
the point.
1950.
You're missing.
I
Sorry, what's
don't
that?
think I'm missing
Yeah,
anything,
I thought-
Brian. How dare you? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're missing one massive thing that kills all of it anyway. And I thought that was what Tent was going to talk about. That's why I didn't come in. No, she said for the orbit of Mercury. Ooh, what orbit?
What's that?
Oh, for the begging the
What's
question. Yeah, I did. I
Yeah.
did hear it, but it didn't slip me by
So-
mentally. But yes, made a mental note of her begging the question orbits that this is based around. But I think Tenth did mention that immediately, or was it John? In other words, this is taking place in all of their begging the question paradigms of orbits and gravity and space vacuums and sphere Earths.
No, this was good that Brian isolated that because there's so many begging the questions just within the statement. I focused on one, Brian focused on the other. They mix so many of these things that don't vet out at all in reality. All of a sudden, Newton is wrong because Mercury is in orbit. Wait a minute, orbit? Where'd you get orbit from?
D Rose corrects me from the chat. It says penal system. My bad. I've moved my chair back 6 inches and I didn't pull the monitor closer, so I'm actually really struggling to read the chat. I should really do something about that, but I'm lazy. I'd rather just strain my eyes, D Rose. But yeah, my bad. After spending a harsh nickel or a dime in the harsh, fierce penal system, damn Skippy, Becky would be mine. See, I can read. I'm not actually thick. Thank you for the super chat again, D Rose.
15 with his theory of general relativity. And I've talked before on this channel about how Mercury's orbit was actually one of the very first tests of general relativity. I'll link the video up.
Again, test in science would be establishing the cause of an effect you've observed. Systematic experimentation, that's a test in science based on a hypothesis.
Here, so you can go check it
But
out
isn't-
if you want.
Isn't that the
Now, the
funny
way
part,
that
though?
Go on, Chocolate.
Sorry. I was gonna say, isn't that the funny part, though? So that supposed test of that supposed theory, how long after that theory was proposed did the test come that validated that? Maybe Brian, maybe you would know. We spoke about this real quick yesterday.
4 years later, because that general relativity is 1915, and Eddington's observation of a solar eclipse is 1919. So 4 years later, it was confirmed, right, in air quotes, that general relativity has been validated.
Okay, so these two, I just want to clarify for the audience. I want to dumb this down for them before you carry on. Sorry, I want to clarify it for the audience. What Brian and Chocolate are discussing is the reverse order that takes effect in pseudoscience claims. So in real science, you start by looking at something happening and you go, I wonder what caused that. I think this causes that. That's your hypothesis. You then vary this to see if it causes that. And if it does, you've got an empirical, validated experiment. That's a test. After that, you form a theory. That's the order of science. Well, in this instance, they get a theory. What's that? What, at step 5? No. At step 1, theory first. So there's the first problem. What comes after theory? No, the theory is the end of it, though, isn't it? It comes after the experiment. No, after the theory comes the test. What? It's arse about face. It's the wrong way round. They start with a theory, then they talk about the test, then they give an explanation and call it hypothesis. Right? They're going backwards in the scientific method. Sorry, carry on, Brian.
Yeah, they end up with, but that's it. That's exactly it. Because what happened, let's just go back a step and we'll come straight to that then. The orbit of Mercury debunked Newton and validated Einstein, right? Supposedly. And then, but then 4 years later, Einstein was validated again when his friend Eddington supposedly made an observation of a solar eclipse that showed that space and time might be curving, right? Now, there's other people who made the same observation and they said they didn't see any of this, but that don't matter. The point is that Newton came up with the effect, but couldn't show a cause. Einstein came up with a cause, and then other people ran around looking for the effect. So it's all ass backwards. It's a disaster.
I have a question. For the most simplistic experiment, or could it be even labeled an experiment? Could this be an experiment? You're at the shore, you see a ship sailing away. It disappears. And the phenomenon or the assumed hypothesis is either it went over the edge of the earth or it just went out of our vision. And then you grab a device and it's a P1000 or something else that zooms it in and it comes into appearance and you can read the name on the ship. And then you take a picture of it. Both times.
Stop.
Okay.
No,
I'm sorry. You said stop.
Your independent variable was two things. So an independent variable is one thing that you'll vary. It's not an either or statement. It might be this or that, and then it's a which one will it be? It's not. It's definitely this. Is it? Well, I don't know yet. I haven't varied it. Let's vary it. So when you say it's
now, what's the dependent?
The phenomena. You said boat disappearing into the distance. Well, if we say bird rather than boat, let's keep it natural. You watch a bird, it flies away from you, it disappears into the distance at the horizon. Okay, natural phenomena observed. Now you've got to vary that which you assume caused that effect. So it's down to you to presume something that would cause that effect to happen. And then you've got to vary that which you assume caused the effect and make the effect happen. That's an experiment. But you don't say, it could be this, or it could be that. It doesn't work like that. It's an independent, single, on its own, alone, variable, that which you assume causes the effect, must be physical and manipulatable by you, the researcher, and it must be your independent variable in the hypothesis. So it's that which you assume causes the effect and that which you assume doesn't cause the effect in the null. That's very important.
Thank you for correcting me. Now, my question is,
could do
can
it.
you do that?
You could
Can
do
you
it.
do
You
that
just
in
need two
situ-
different experiments.
Okay.
Sorry,
So
but
you can't just do it by the way I explained it, by
It
using the
depends.
device and seeing the bird.
Depends. Dependent variable. We've got
Okay.
things disappearing into the distance at the horizon. That's a valid valid phenomenon to be studying.
Mhm.
But what do you assume
Mhm.
causes that? Then we'll, see if it formulates into a
Gotcha.
hypothesis.
Your assumed cause
Okay.
should be diffraction, because that's a natural. So you have a natural effect, and your assumed, which is your observed phenomenon. Then you have a natural cause that you already know about, because you said, "Is it going over the curve of the Earth?" Who validated any of this? This is something you're pre-assuming. Where you have a natural effect, so you should have a natural cause. So the natural cause you pre-assume as your IV is diffraction, and you validate or invalidate that it's diffraction.
Stop. Not diffraction, right? Angular
Why not?
resolution. That's different. The diffraction limit is incorporated. But if you're starting from a point of a complete layman and you're going to actually formulate this into a valid hypothesis that is verifiable, then the thing that you'd vary would be the angle in the angular resolution. Limit is the diffraction limit that you're referring to. But merely angular resolution could be varied by you, the researcher, in something physical by varying your angle physically with the land. Well, the land could have the angle increase by you raising in altitude. That widens your angle to that point in the distance. Ergo, you can raise in altitude and bring things back if you widen the limits of the diffraction that you're describing as the IV. Well, you can't vary diffraction. You can vary the angle in angular resolution. So you'd do that. You'd vary the angle. That would be your IV.
Yeah, but is angular resolution not a calculation as opposed to a natural phenomenon?
No,
No,
Is
it's a
diffraction
limit.
not the natural phenomenon?
Adam wants to answer as well, but no. But go ahead, Adam.
No, it's a limitation of the lens described mathematically as that limitation, isn't it? So it's just what the lens is able to resolve.
That's the Rayleigh. Well, yeah, in a calculation, that's the Rayleigh criterion. But
Yeah.
that's not what we're describing if we describe merely the angular resolution, because that's directly connected to the angle. Well, while you've got a limit to the aperture that you can calculate with the Rayleigh criterion, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm merely talking about the angle. In other words, as we've seen with demonstrations back in 2015, right? If you've got a coin on a table that you have the camera lined up with and you slide the coin away, eventually you lose the bottom of the coin, right? It reaches and breaches the diffraction limit, right? Well, if you then raise the camera, you bring the bottom back because you're altering the angle. You're increasing the angle, therefore widening the resolution based on that angle. Now, if you push it to the point where that angle is so limited that you reach and breach that diffraction limit, calculable in the Rayleigh criterion, then that is another way to limit the angle, but you're keeping the consistency the same, and it's only going to diffract at the point that the lens itself would diffract. But when you're trying to boil this down for D. Rose in the most simplistic way of what you could verify as an IV, it has to fulfill certain criteria. It's got to be the independent variable, it's got to be real, and it's got to be manipulatable by you, the researcher. Can I manipulate the angle? Yes, I can. Is it real? Yeah, my angle relative to the surface is a real thing, and I can manipulate it. Is it my independent variable? Yeah, it fulfills all criteria.
Okay, but my issue with it would be that what is the reason for, what is the natural cause of the bottom of the coin disappearing? Now, okay, you would
limited
have to
angle.
Zoom, like, hang on. Like Mitchell showed, when he lifted the camera up, you could see the coin again. He put it back down, you couldn't see the bottom of the coin. But when he zoomed, you could see the whole of the coin again from the same elevation. So
you move the lens closer.
Yeah,
You're physically,
I understand that. But
hold on. When you zoom, you're physically moving the lens closer to the item. Yeah?
I'm trying to explain something, but you keep jumping on me, telling me about angular resolution. I know what angular resolution is. I'm very aware of it. What causes the diffraction limit? What causes diffraction?
It's a combination
How do you
of
end
things.
up with diffraction?
When you say
diffraction, angular resolution is part of diffraction.
yeah, it
You
is.
can't have
But when
diffraction
when
without
it
angular
is,
resolution.
okay, you've got to be more specific, because when you just say diffraction, all you mean is interference, which has many different variants in terms of how you can describe that interference. Now, if you're talking about the breaching of the point that's described in the Rayleigh criterion, that would be where you, if it was in terms of the pixels of a camera, where 2 pixels are distinguishable from one another, and then at a greater distance in this instance, pushing the coin back, they merge together as one. In other words, you can't distinguish one from the other. There is, quote unquote, interference. Well, that interference, the 2 interfering with each other, the 2 pixels in this example, that's diffraction. There's no discernible difference between those 2 words in their descriptive context in this regard. Interference is diffraction. Now, when you say what causes the interference, that would be to say what causes one pixel, the bird, and the other, the ground, to not be resolvable anymore. Well, that is based on angle. Now, you can further extrapolate out that if you'd already done the experiment to establish that angle has something to do with it, that the limitation of the lens also plays a factor in terms of where that limit would be with distance. But in terms of merely what would cause it, if you could just establish one thing to vary that you have control over as a researcher, that you could have as your independent variable, angle is the only thing that I can qualify it with. If you want to put it in science, this is the first time I've been challenged to do so, by the way. No one's ever put it in this context. I mean, well done to D. Rose. It's generated a great discussion.
Thank you. That's why I did it.
No,
Because
Hold on, Brian.
hold on.
Hold on,
That's
D.
why I did
Rose.
it. That's why. That's okay.
Just 1 sec. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, see, I don't separate angular resolution from diffraction, because diffraction is caused by a lack of the angular. It's caused by the angular resolution limit. It's because of that interference. You have 2 things amalgamating, and you can't decipher between them which is which, like the bird and the sea surface. Let's just say, right? You have the bird, sea surface, and the sky all meeting at the same point. So I don't separate them. So yeah, okay, I concede. Yeah, you'd have to manipulate the angular resolution limit. But as far as my point was, and okay, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my point was is that what is it that you're claiming causes it? Why can't you see the bird? Is it because of the angular resolution limit, or is it diffraction? Because I don't see the difference between the 2.
Well, there isn't a difference if you're talking about the limit, which is the phenomena, but that's your dependent variable. The limit itself, the point that you lose the item is the point that you have interference. That's the DV.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I'll step back. I accept.
You could say independent variable angle, and then dependent variable interference. But it's oversimplistic, because angle causes interference. Well, in this regard, yeah, angle to the item in the distance causes interference.
Yeah, fair enough. I was thinking of it as you claim that the reason you can't see the board or whatever is because of diffraction. But at that point, diffraction is your DV.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
But by the same token, we're then dangerously close to the realm of quantum mechanics. Because what are you studying when you talk about the double slit? You're talking about that as a phenomena. That is the phenomena. Diffraction is what you get when you have all the different dots on the photographic plate. That's diffraction. Right? So then you're into, okay, when you establish that what causes diffraction, in this case, interference, it's not going through the slit and hitting behind, it's going off to one way, off to the other way, and then you can work out your probability distribution, aka wave function, from the diffraction pattern. But then you go, what causes diffraction? In other words, what causes to not know where that particle's going to be when the next one comes? We don't know where that particle will be on the horizon. When you boil it down to the establishment of cause and effect reasoning when it comes to light, we're no longer in the purview of my oversimplified cause and effect reasoning with angular resolution, and we're down to knowledge of which path the light has traversed.
If you
Go on, John.
also, if you change the angle to the double slit, does that mean what? Diffraction's still occurring.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So we're beyond where we might start to answer D. Rose's question. Yeah? We could establish cause and effect if you could qualify it as a validated DV. But as soon as you do, and you do as we have done and got to the point where we're describing light diffraction, that is a phenomenon that's been studied. But it didn't come up with me walking up and down and getting up and down on a tree like our opponents ask us to do when they tell us to look at Earth curve as the horizon. We get to quantum mechanics. And lo and behold, we come full circle, because what are we talking about with Dr. Becky, and indeed legal Bytes? We're talking about Newtonian concepts superseded 108 years ago by Einsteinian calculations, debunked by quantum mechanics. And what's quantum mechanics? Well, we're talking about the study of light and light diffraction, knowledge of the which path, the evolution to the semiconductors that we are using to communicate with. Mad world, isn't it? When you boil down, what is Earth curve? All right. Well, you could describe it as the diffraction limit. What's diffraction? Interesting subject.
Nathan,
Nathan,
it's an interesting
Nathan,
summary you just gave
real
there.
quick.
Hang on for a second. The summary you gave is perfect. It's only a mad world because it's all based on an equation and not reality. It's funny how the real things are not confusing, even centuries later, or mad.
Okay, we've been going for a little over an hour. I don't know, we're only a little bit way through Becky, not anywhere near enough to ascribe an entire show to him, but I don't feel justified extending the live show when we're only 2 minutes into a 19-minute Becky video. There's hardly anybody watching. There's only 100 people watching. I mean, I say only. I'm really pleased to everybody who's watching, but I think we might pick up with Dr. Becky tomorrow. What do you guys reckon?
Agreed.
I would extend the live show and see if more people join. Because when people come along and they see, what time is it? Oh, 10 to, let's say they're in London and they go, oh, it's 10 to 3. There's no point going on to Nathan's now because I only hear a few minutes of it. Do you reckon a way? Maybe you get more viewers. Maybe you'd get more viewers on a regular basis if the show was that extra the live show was that extra half an hour longer.
I don't know about that. Anyway.
Well, if you look at the times when you did have a longer show, you look at the more viewers that you had on those longer shows.
Yeah, but those shows were always super exciting, whereas this one's been middle of the road. I mean, it's been all right. But with that, I am going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching an after show, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!